The air hangs thick with the smell of rot and decay as I trudge through the barren wasteland. My backpack rattles behind me, weighed down by the scrap and junk I've scavenged. Pots and pans, cutlery, tins, gears. In this world, anything can be bartered. The ruin of the planet cost us everything. Food is the most precious commodity, and that's what I'm after. Ahead, this remote village squats on the horizon, small and miserable. I see the remains of cottages, sagging and bent under the weight of years of neglect. As I draw closer, the villagers gather, eyes glinting with suspicion. They are not much more than ghosts, these people. Ragged clothes, hollow eyes, skin stretched taut over their bones. But they have tilled fields and chicken coops, and have food to trade. A woman approaches me, basket in hand, her face wrinkled and weathered. She trades me a bundle of root vegetables and eggs, enough to last me a week if I'm careful. In exchange, she takes out a large iron pot I'd hung on my backpack. As I turn to leave, she sees fit to warn me about the forest that lies beyond the next ridgeline. Do not enter Woad Wood, she says. The witch lives there. Nobody ever returns. I grunt, not dignifying the warning with a reply, and take to the path leading me away. Witches. In this world, it's not witches you have to fear, but men. As this thought crosses my mind, I glance at a group of hunters and farmers loitering by the edge of the village, pitchforks and sickles clutched in their hands. Their eyes follow me, dark, suspicious. My tired legs ache as I make my way out of the village, the sun already beginning its slow descent. Shadows stretch long across the cracked earth, and I pick up my pace. Something about the way those men stared at me, the gleam in their eyes, sits wrong. The warning about the witch has unsettled me, and I ponder my fear. Cannibalism is rife in the wasteland, and I wonder if this person is an example. Up ahead, I see the line of dark trees that mark the edge of Woad Wood. It is getting late. The air turns colder as twilight creeps in, and I start to consider making camp. And then I hear it, the rush of footsteps behind me. I spin, barely catching the flash of movement before they're on me. A blow catches me across the jaw, and I stagger, arms flailing to grab anything. Take him, someone growls, and the group of men from the village swarm about me as wolves around prey. I swing wildly, but it's useless. A boot connects with my ribs, pain flares, and the world spins. I drop to the ground, and they tear off my backpack, ripping away the few meagre supplies I managed to collect. Before I can process the chaos, something hard slams into the side of my skull, and everything goes black. I drift in and out of awareness, floating between pain and darkness. I feel my heels drag against the rough ground, scraping over twigs and stones, my limbs heavy, useless. The smell of damp earth fills my nose. I try to open my eyes, but the weight and unconsciousness pulls me under again. I wake to the taste of blood and the sound of my own ragged breathing. My wrists burn, bound tight to the edge of the marrow bed, the ropes biting into my skin. My whole body throbs with the pain of my wounds. The room around me is dark, lit only by a flickering candle on a wooden table. A peculiar smell hangs in the air, sweetness and decay mingling. Dead animals, chickens, rabbits, birds, are strung up from the rafters, their limp bodies swaying gently. Clumps of herbs and weeds lie scattered on every surface. Somewhere in the darkness, I can hear the bubbling of a large pot. Panic grips me, and I thrash, trying to free myself. The pain surges through my body, sharp and burning, but the ropes hold. My heart pounds in my chest, each beat thudding louder than the last. I have been caught by the witch. Perhaps that pot is meant for me. I wriggle my arms, twisting, pulling, teeth gritted against the pain, until, finally, the rope gives. My hands are free. I push myself up, vision swimming, and stumble towards the door. The floor shifts under my feet, the walls closing in, but I lurch forward, desperate. I burst through an oak door, and outside, air hits me like a slap, cold and biting. Falling into the dark garden, I turn to see the house, crouching in the centre of a twisted grove within Woad Wood, vines choking the light from the trees. Rows of plants, herbs maybe, stretch out in crooked lines, their leaves drooping, blackened. The trees loom over the house, their dead branches reaching towards the sky, claws grasping at nothing. The air reeks of decay. I collapse through the bush, pushing past thorny brambles, tugging at my skin, but my foot catches. A vine, thick and knotted. I trip, crashing to the ground. Pain explodes in my head, and once again, the world blurs, spins. Limbs heavy, I try to crawl, but my body betrays me. I fall to the ground, sweat bursting on my forehead, utterly exhausted. A shadow looms over me, dragging something behind it. The figure bends down, black against the night, hands rough as they lift me onto a makeshift stretcher. I try to fight, to move, but my body refuses. Pain, exhaustion, everything weighs me down. She drags me inside, back to the room, back to the bed. I'm too weak to resist as she forces something to my lips, a bitter drink. I gag, trying to spit it out, but her hands are firm, relentless. She pinches my nose and pushes my jaw shut. The liquid burns as it slides down my throat, and I choke, my vision blurring once more. When I wake again, daylight filters through cracks in the shuttered windows. My wrists are still tied, or my body thrums with constant pain. I turn my head, and she stands over me. A woman bent with age, her back hunched, her face twisted, one side drooping like melted wax. She watches me with dark, glinting eyes, her twisted mouth pulling at the corners. Her dress, black as night, clings to her frame. She moves with a limp, dragging one foot as she shuffles around the room. Her silence is unnerving, worse than any words she might speak. But then she laughs, a sharp cackle. It echoes in the small space, sharp as a knife. I swallow hard, my throat dry. What do you want from me? She says nothing, only grins that awful crooked grin. Then she moves to a wooden cage, pulls out a live rabbit, and snaps its spine in one swift motion. I flinch, watching as she hangs the rabbit by its feet. From her belt, she removes a small knife, and then proceeds to slice the throat of the dead rabbit. The blood drips into a pot, thick and dark, pooling at the bottom. She plucks a feather from a dead crow hanging from the rafters. She tests the tip of the feather with her finger before grabbing the pot of blood and approaching me. From the drawers by the side of the bed, she produces a blank sheet of parchment. Using the feather as a quill, she dips it into the blood. Her hand moves over the parchment, the nib scratching against the surface as she writes. Slowly, she turns the parchment towards me. I want to help you. Her words hang, written in blood, the spidery letters glistening wet on the parchment. Help me. My pulse pounds in my ears, drowning out the faint creaks of the house settling around us. Every instinct screams to run, but the ropes bite into my wrists. I shift, wincing at the sharp sting from the cuts and bruises I've sustained. She watches me, still as stone, the feather dripping in her hand. The stench of dead meat clogs the air, mingling with the pungent odour of herbs hanging from the ceiling. Everything about this place feels twisted. She gestures again to the paper, as if impatient for me to understand. Why? I choke out the words, my throat raw. Why am I tied up? Her eyes narrow, but she doesn't speak. Instead, her claw-like fingers trace the letters on the parchment, and she scrawls another message with agonizing slowness. So you don't scratch your wounds. A shiver runs down my spine. Her reasoning is practical. She turns her back on me, her hunched figure bending awkwardly, as she collects dried herbs from a shelf, crushing them between her fingers into a small bowl. The rhythmic grinding fills the silence, broken only by her occasional raspy breaths. "Who are you?" I ask, though my voice trembles. "What is this place?" She ignores me, but I catch a flicker in her eyes, something old, worn. Instead of answering, she grabs a jar of cloudy liquid from a table, pours it over the herbs and stirs. I grit my teeth, pulling against the ropes, trying to break free, but my arms are weak, my strength drained by infection and days of pain. The witch shuffles towards me, limping heavily. Her misshapen figure casts a long shadow over the bed, the dim light warping her features further. She holds out the bowl, offering it to me. The liquid inside is a deep green, swirling thickly, bits of crushed leaves floating on the surface. I eye it, stomach twisting. What is that? She presses the bowl to my lips, her hands firm, insistent. Panic rises in my chest, and I clap my mouth shut, shaking my head, but she's relentless. Her fingers grip my jaw, forcing it open with surprising strength, and the bitter mixture spills into my mouth. I gag, struggling to spit it out, but her hand clutches over my mouth, again forcing me to swallow. The taste is foul, burning as it slides down my throat. For a second, I think I'll vomit, but the sensation passes. My limbs grow heavier, the pain in my side dulling to a distant throb. My mind clouds over, thoughts drifting. She watches as my body succumbs to whatever potion she's forced down my throat, her eyes glittering like dark stones. As my vision begins to blur, her crooked smile stretches wider, her cackle, high, sharp, echoing in my skull, and so I slip into the black void once more. When I wake, it's quieter. The ache in my body has dulled, but it's still there, gnawing at the edges of my awareness. She's sitting in the corner, stirring something in a pot over a small fire, her movements slow and deliberate. I flex my fingers, testing the ropes. They're gone. My wrists are bruised, raw, but free. I sit up slowly, the world tilting slightly as I swing my legs over the side of the bed. My wounds are bandaged, crudely but effectively. The infection hasn't spread further, but the skin around the bandaging is swollen, angry red. She doesn't notice me at first, or pretends not to, but I can see her crooked spine bent over her work. I stare at her, really taking her in for the first time. Her black dress hangs loosely over her thin frame, and the half of her face that isn't frozen in that permanent droop is tired. The skin around her eyes is lined with age, and her hair, though mostly covered by a scarf, spills out in greasy strands. A once beautiful face, ravaged by time and something else. A wave of clarity strikes me as I look upon her, a realization that my befuddled mind and injured body refuse to acknowledge. I'd succumbed to the superstitions of the village. This old lady must have suffered a stroke that robbed her of her speech and caused the physical abnormalities. She turns towards me, catching my gaze, the air between us thick. "What do you want?" I ask again, my voice stronger now, but the fear still simmers beneath the surface. "Why did you help me?" She reaches for another sheet of parchment from the drawer, her gnarled fingers trembling slightly as she dips the quill into the rabbit's blood again. I watch as she writes, slowly and methodically, the scratching sound of the quill filling the room. "I want to live in peace. They want to destroy me." The words chill me. The villagers, the ones who warned me, the ones who attacked me. I glance at her again, her hunched figure and crooked smile. She isn't what they think she is. Not a witch, not exactly. She holds up another sheet of parchment, and this time words are simpler. "Will you help me?" I hesitate, my mind racing. She saved me, kept me alive when the infection would have killed me. But nothing in this world is without cost, a price to be paid. I glance around the room at the dangling carcasses, the dried herbs, the strange relics of a life isolated from the world. Her cackle bursts from her lips again like a crone's call. She dips the quill into the blood, and with a slow, deliberate stroke, writes again, "Help me with the villagers." I stare at the words, my breath catching in my throat. She's asking for protection. From them. From the same people who want her gone, the ones who fear her. She looks up at me, her crooked smile gone, replaced by something quieter, more vulnerable, a plea. I sit up straighter, eyes narrowing. "You want me to talk to them? They tried to kill me." She doesn't move, doesn't blink, but the corners of her mouth twitch just slightly. She dips the quill into the blood again, her hand trembling as she writes, "I just want them to leave me alone." She rises from her seat, her hunched form casting long, distorted shadows against the flickering firelight. Her twisted hand grips the bowl of herbs and liquid, and she brings it over, setting it on a low table beside me. "You fed me that." "Not me out. You could have killed me any time. Why didn't you?" She tilts her head, watching me closely. Her one good eye glints, a mix of pity and something darker, like triumph. She grabs another sheet of parchment, and I watch as she writes, "Because I need you alive. The villagers will return. They always do." I shake my head. "They think you're a witch. They'll burn you alive if they get the chance." "They've tried before." The words send a shiver through me. This woman has survived alone all this time. The distrust and superstition of the village threatens her existence. She just wants to live in peace with the remnants of nature that are trying so desperately to re-establish themselves. But now she is infirm. She can no longer fight for herself. She needs my help. As I consider her words, she leaves the room for a moment before returning with a book. I feel the leather-bound cover as she hands it to me, and when I open the pages, yellowed photographs stare back. It does not take me long to see that they are pictures of her in her youth, before this rotted world came to pass. In some photographs, she is dressed in a nurse's uniform. In others, she is smiling as she is tending to her garden, holding up potted plants and carrying chickens under her arm. I run a hand through my filthy hair, the exhaustion from days of pain and fever crashing into me all at once. "What's your plan?" I ask. "How do you expect me to stop them? They already tried to kill me." "They need to fear coming to this place," she writes. Turning to a tall cabinet, its doors creaking as she pulls them open. Inside, rows of glass jars gleam, filled with thick black liquid. She motions to one jar, swirling the contents slowly. She uncorks the lid, and the liquid bubbles from froths, releasing a sickly sweet scent that burns my throat. I stare at the jars. "You want me to, what, poison them?" Her hunched shoulders rise and fall in a shrug, and she writes again. "If they attack, we defend. This will make them sick." I close my eyes, running my hand over the rough bandages on my side. The infection still lingers under the surface, but the pain has dulled. I should be dead. She saved me. But at what cost? The villagers, the ones who warned me to stay away, the ones who robbed me, intend to pay her a visit too. Their fear and superstition enough to bring them to violence. And when they do, I'll have to choose. I nod and ring to help her, and she cackles loudly, rubbing her hands together. The next few days pass in a blow. My strength returns, slowly, thanks to her concoctions and the rabbit meat she feeds me, obtained from the small game traps she has placed around the wood. The house becomes a little less foreign as I watch her work. It's not the den of horrors I'd imagined, just a home. A strange, twisted home, full of drying herbs and hanging carcasses, but it's functional, efficient. Her rituals aren't magic. They're just ways of survival. She never speaks, of course, but her cackle still haunts the air at night, a reminder of the strangeness lurking in every shadow. I catch glimpses of her past, photographs tucked away in battered albums. She's younger in them, standing in gardens, smiles on her face, no crooked spine, no dripping eye. A healer, not a witch. On the 5th night, they come. The first hint of danger is the sound of crackling fire. It creeps in on the wind, faint but unmistakable. I step to the window, pulling aside the filthy curtain, and I see the torches bobbing through the trees, their flames flickering like willow wisps in the dusk. They're here, I whisper. We are prepared. Behind me, she's already moving, limping towards the cabinet. The air thickens with anticipation, her fingers moving with practiced calm as she hands me one of the jars, the black, fake liquid sloshing inside. I'll need to move quickly or they'll burn the house down, I say, staring at the approaching lights. Quickly, I leave through a window on the back of the house to not alert the intruders. In my pocket, I have darts, whittled down from dead wood, and in my right hand, a blowpipe. The left holds the poison. I climb the husk of the dead tree next to the house as quietly as possible. I see the group of men approaching, the torches light in their faces. It was the same group that attacked me, about 10 of them. They must see themselves as the village militia, here to destroy what they see as an abomination, and no doubt steal whatever valuables she may possess. In addition to their burning lights, they carry pitchforks and scythes. They have not noticed me in the trees. They do not expect any resistance from this old hag. I dip a dart in the poison and place it into the pipe as they approach. Taking aim at the nearest one, as he walks below my position, I puff my cheeks and blow. A quick hand to his neck indicates my dart has hit, and I quickly reload with another. For a moment my target looks confused. He stops in his tracks and looks around as though he does not know where he is. Then he begins to wave his arm about, warding off invisible phantoms. This concoction was causing hallucinations. He cries and screams, writhing this way and that, swinging his arms about as madness engulfs. As he does so, I strike another man, reload, and then another. As insanity engulfs them, the rest of the party start to wonder what is going on. They hesitate, but not for long. They surge forward, a swarm of bodies and makeshift weapons. The 3 I have hit scream in terror at unseen horrors, but the rest of them make for the front of the house. The door is flung open, and she stands before them. The witch, cackling loudly, she holds a packet in her hand, a pouch full of herbs and flowers, and in the other a candle. She puts the flame to the packet and throws it at the assailants. It explodes in front of them, lighting up the wood in a flash of flame. Fire of every colour, blue, green and red. They recoil, and I hit another with my poisoned dart. Those affected start to attack the other members of the group, believing them to be monsters or demons. They slash at them with their scythes and poke them with their pitchforks, crazed looks in their eyes. Caught between fire and madness, they retreat, fighting amongst themselves, trying to fathom what devilish magic has overcome them. They flee, and I listen to their screams as I watch their firelight fade into the woods. As the silence returns, I hear her cackle as I climb down the tree. We return into the house. Collapsing into a chair, the candlelight playing on my face, I consider my future. She has food and warmth, her potions can heal, but she also has poisons to defend against the harsh survivors of this forgotten world. But she is aging and needs protecting against those who seek to do her harm. The villagers have fled and will no doubt tell of tales of her calling down the devil to possess them and drive them away. But they may be back one day. As I rest, a thought strikes me. Maybe she has cast a spell on me. Maybe I am now her thrall. But be that as it may, I have found my home. My wandering days are over.